had to make sure my sound was working. So welcome back. It's been another week, and yeah, thanks so much for being here. I want to thank everybody who has been viewing live as well as watching the replay. It really means a lot to me that anybody would show up and be interested in what I'm making. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For those of you that don't know me, that are joining me first live, like this is your first live, or maybe this is your first time watching the playback. My name is Erin, and I like to make stuff. So I have a background in more three-dimensional arts. I studied metals and ceramics in school at university. And then I've always just kind of since childhood really liked making different things, whether that was like spending time in the craft room or different art classes. I really enjoyed like helping my dad out around the house with just like all of his handy projects, him being an old woodworker and like drafting teacher, and he's really good with his hands. And my mom did a lot of like crafting things like flower decorations and cake decorating, and like those are just some of my memories of all the different things I was exposed to as a kid. And so like now that I've moved into adulthood, like I just like making stuff, but I struggle as an artist to show up for myself and to work on my artwork. I think of it as having to be like amazing and always wonderful, especially in today's kind of world of like fast paced, constantly like putting out products or content. And I don't know, like that just really kind of puts me in a very weird mindset. And what I mean by that is I can't say that it's the most helpful mindset to be in as a creative. And so I'm really working on reframing the way that I think about my art and thinking of it more as a practice instead of, oh, I have to, every time I show up and put something out there, it has to be done, it has to be polished. And for me, I thought the best way to do that would be to start this channel, to be live, to just show up, give myself a commitment once a week to spending time here and with you while I'm just sharing whatever it is I'm working on, however mundane it might feel, however nervous I am that I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, and just giving myself that space and that time to show up for myself and my art. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for kind of listening to a little bit about me and why I have this channel and why I started. So yeah, I am in the process of doing a custom sneaker with the Spoon Sport livery. So we're going to be embroidering them, and I didn't make a ton of progress, actually almost no progress from last week. So I apologize in advance if you joined me last week that I really haven't made much progress, so sorry. I do, however, want to start out with the quote that I've been reading because it really helps ground myself, and it helps ground me to what I just shared regarding thinking of art as a practice. And really this whole thing is just about my creative process and not necessarily like the end thing that I'm making. So this is a quote from the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I'd like to start with that. At the heart of artistic avoidance is the denial of. We like to focus on having learned a skill or having made an artwork. This attention to final form ignores that creativity lies not in the done, but in the doing. I always love that. It's really powerful for me, and yeah, thank you. So I guess without further ado, maybe just a quick recap of where we are. So this is the concept for the sneaker that I'm working on. You can see behind me that I've already done a pair. I already completed a pair that were painted, but we don't wear those because again, it was the first time I did it and I learned a lot in the process. So yeah, I am currently in the process of doing this same livery, the Spoon Sport livery. You can see it here on a couple different cars. Super fun. This is a collaboration with my husband. He's the kind of mastermind behind it with the love of sneakers and the love of shoes. And I am executing. And then, yeah, I got the idea to take some Fear of Gods and maybe embroider since I'm learning to embroider. So this is kind of my original concept sketch. I'm working on the inside of the shoe, so I'm going to use this one as reference and have this one up while we're working, even though everything's inverted, whatever. Yeah, and that's kind of where we are. So I guess let's get started. I'll work for 20 minutes, take a break. That's usually how I go, and kind of chat in between. So this is where I'm at. I've been successfully able to embroider the back section and this section, and then last week I started here, and I didn't really get much further. Right now I'm at a point where I'm going to end it, so I thought I would show you how I end, and then I'll kind of continue on with what I'm working on. So I made sure I didn't want to end it exactly where the shoe bends. So last week I talked a little bit about in this section, unlike these sections. So these sections here, as the shoe gets worn, and as we know when our foot is in a shoe, you know, you have like that bend point at the toe box. So that's kind of usually right about here. And so I've been very conscientious about my stitches and wanting to make them short so that it gives the maximum amount of flexibility within the stitch to move with that bend. But in the same vein of thought, I'm coming up on the end of my floss here, and my embroidery floss, and I didn't want to end it exactly like on the crease. So I can tell when like I squish this where that crease is gonna be, and it's like right on that right now. So I might actually end up stitching it out and stitching it back here, because what I don't want is I don't want the tie off to be at a place that gets a lot of movement, just in case for some reason the movement dislodges or unravels or dislodges the knot and kind of the tying in itself. So I wanted to show you that, because sometimes like these are all of like the things that I'm thinking about as I'm making. So yeah, so I'm gonna unstitch a little bit, because like I said, when I do this, I can see exactly where the shoe's gonna bend. So I probably want to end my stitch over here a little bit more and tie it off there. So that is what I'm gonna do. I'm just using a blunt embroidery needle actually to do this, because that allows me to get in, pull out my stitches without like poking or snagging anything. So if I bend it a little bit more, I think I want to tie it off here is probably a slightly better area. So that's where I'm going to tie it off. I got to thread back my needle. And how's everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well. Spring is in full swing, depending on where you are located. Hopefully get some beautiful flowers and springtime weather wherever you are. I know for myself, the days are getting warmer, which is nice, and I go out for my walks and there's lots of pretty flowers. I love it. Okay, so I don't want to continue on. I want to stitch underneath the existing stitch, so that way I can't really, I have a way to hide it, as then I loop in a new knot. So I'm going to use my embroidery needle to just kind of move this aside so I can see where's a hole I can go into to tie this off. So I'm basically going straight back through the same loop I just did, and then I am going to thread it through to go ahead and give myself a bit of a knot here. And then after I've knotted it, I'm just gonna sorry, sometimes I cannot talk and do at the exact same time. Yeah, so I'm just gonna thread the remaining kind of backtrack with it, and as I do it, I'm going to just be wrapping it around some of the mesh, and which will hold it in place. And you guys maybe have seen me do this since the beginning, but if not, this is kind of my tie off process. Maybe I haven't shown this yet. And then I'm gonna go back through that same and kind of just loop it around. This is a technique that I use when I am crocheting. I don't know if this is really a true embroidery technique, but a lot of times when I'm crocheting, when I have to switch my colors of thread, or I'm making a transition, rather than knotting and tying it off and having like a little tail, I end up weaving the tail back through the stitches. But what's interesting is if you weave, like if you weave just once, it'll pull out, right? So if I take my thread and I weave just once, it'll pull out. But if you weave once and then back again and then back again, so it almost makes like a long S. So if you pull on one end, it's gonna stop. So that's the technique that I'm using, meaning going in and going, kind of looping it back to give it's not gonna wiggle its way out, is what I'm trying to say. So this, like I said, is something that I have used with my crochet techniques and just my years of crocheting. And so I figured, you know what, I think that's probably a pretty good way to secure this as well. And then I'm gonna let this go long. Usually I wrap it through. I'm just gonna let this go long and leave my tails because I'm not exactly sure how I want to like weave them back in. So now that that is finished off, I've knotted it, I finished it off, I'm going to start with a new string of floss. So I'm using a length that maybe is about, a yard, almost a meter, somewhere in there. It basically goes from the tip of my fingers to my other shoulder. So that's the length of it. And I'm using the full floss thread, which is all 6 strands. And that is to give maximum fill, since the fabric that on the shoe is like this larger mesh. Yep. And then I've been doing this kind of modified back stitch, since I am not doing a traditional embroidery of being able to like hoop the fabric that I'm working on and work that way. Instead, the shoe is fixed and I am embroidered kind of one-sided, if that makes sense. Yep. So I'm gonna come back up to where, actually no. I don't want to come back up because that's going to be right on the seam. So I'm going to, again, start a little bit further back and then I'll just end up filling. I'm going to start a little bit back and then I'll end up filling in this seam a bit. Yeah, so that's how I do it. That's how I shall do it. And then whenever I start, I split kind of the floss in half and insert, so that way it's knotted and it's like knotted in on itself, so it's not going to come out, because again, I want it to stay really secure. These are going to be warm shoes. And I just feel like, okay, that's probably a good way to do it. Right. So on this kind of back stitch, I go up a little bit and then I come right back through the same hole that the last stitch entered into. And then I'm keeping my yarn on the outside, or in this case, my left, of the stitch itself, so that when I pull it and I come this way, it's on the left side, and I have the yarn that I'm working with on the right side. And I'm finding that what that's doing is it's pushing the yarn towards the rest of the stitches and filling it in nicely. So each time I'm making sure that I'm following the exact same pattern. You can see I go right back through. Oops, sorry, that was my hat in the way. So you can see I'm going right back through where this one just entered. I make sure my thread, my floss is on the left side as I pull through. And then when I pull, strength-wise, I'm pulling just enough to flatten the floss, but not so much that it's really pulling hard on the fabric seam. So just enough, kind of like, I don't know, I would say like a medium pressure. And there you can see, same thing. So I'm only doing maybe less than a centimeter, probably maybe, yeah, somewhere around a centimeter, give or take, per stitch. I think that's probably like a good general gauge of how long of a stitch I'm doing with these. Yep. I will say, now that I have figured out my stitch, I'm noticing I'm picking it up much faster and I'm able to kind of jump back in. So I know I didn't get any progress done this last week. However, I did want to talk a little bit about something that I have been struggling with for a while as a maker, as a creator, and that is one of the reasons why I started this channel, but showing up for myself and making work, but I think more so realizing how I tend to stay in my head a lot as an artist and as a creative. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, because I don't know, if you're creative and you deal with that, or even if you're not, like, I wonder if that's something, that we all kind of deal with across different disciplines, and everything. Oh, hey, Austin, welcome to the stream. Okay, so you've asked me, what is traditional embroidery? That is a great question. I don't know that I'm best suited to answer that, but let me show you kind of the first thing that I embroidered, as well as an example. Not funny. If I can find it. I'm still here. Okay, so this is something I'm going to show you. This was made by my very dear friend Rosa. And then let me see if I can find my original embroidery. Okay, so to answer your question, Austin, about traditional embroidery, sorry about that. So traditional embroidery, in my understanding, is you work on a hoop, and the reason you do that is to get really smooth, and this is not a great example. I think my friend Rose's is a much better example. So she did what's called a satin stitch here, and this is this beautiful, beautiful embroidery that she made for me as a gift. This is actually based on a photo of myself and actually you. And this is us out in Angel's Landing at Zion National Park up on top. And so she took a photo and then she turned it into this amazing, amazing embroidery. So in order to get these really even, smooth stitches, and if I come up closer, you can just see like how evenly it lines up. Well, to get that really clean line, have it be super precise, you work on a ring such as this, and that is because, and so you put your fabric in here, and then what that does is it allows you to put your needle through and then come out the back side, and then you can be really precise as to where it's coming back up. But it allows for just, I guess, proper embroidery stitches. I would say I'd have to go on and probably watch somebody's video to explain it better. And so you can see on the back what it also looks like. So this is, I guess, what I would mean when I say traditional embroidery, that the technique is you're stretching your fabric, because typically too, you want the fabric taut, like not so tight, it's like pulling in weird ways. Like as it's not buckling, it's nice and even. So it's nice and, you know, it's got a little bit of like spring to it. I don't know if you can hear that or kind of see that. So it's gonna have spring to it, so it's not super loose. And by the base fabric itself that you're embroidering into being taut, it makes it so that way your stitches, like the fabric isn't moving, and it keeps your stitches nice and even. So that's what I mean with the traditional embroidery, but I'm not doing that. I don't have the ability to do that on these shoes because the shoes are already made. Yeah, I guess if I was making my own shoe from scratch, which I don't know how to do, but if I worked with somebody who knew how to do that, sure, you could take the fabric, maybe embroider ahead of time, but I don't know. So this shoe just so happens to have the mesh, so it's almost as if I were trying to embroider this without being able to go back through from the other side. So that's why I'm using the hook needle, and that's kind of the difference. Compare. So if that's not clear, give me a follow-up question. But yeah, that's what I mean. I love this. It's my favorite. I absolutely love it. It's so sweet when people give you like homemade gifts and gifts that they really put so much time and energy and thought into. This really captures a memory that we all made together, and I absolutely love it. My baseball cap keeps coming into the frame, doesn't it? Sorry. I didn't feel like doing my hair today. It's interesting how quickly I can get out of the routine when I take like even just a quick moment and I start introducing other things on my desk. I quickly get out of that rhythmic momentum. That's interesting. That's an interesting observation I just had. See how right now, I just paused. I don't know if you can see it because my string is on the incorrect side. Oh no, it's on the correct side. My brain stopped working for a minute. It is on the correct side. All right. So I think I've been at this for 20 minutes. I'm just gonna finish this stitch because I need to draw this line in, and plus I'm coming to the end. And I'm not really quite ready to break yet. So I need to be very conscientious of exactly where my placement is right now. So in order to achieve that, I'm just going to do slightly smaller stitches. It's easier to make little adjustments in smaller stitches to refine the line than to try to manipulate long stitches. Meaning, it's kind of like in drawing, if you connect a whole bunch of little lines versus drawing longer lines. Sometimes it's easier to like execute a curve or something like that. I have a little bit of like a, you see that on the string? So that's causing it as it pulls through to not pull through even. So I want to get that smoothed out on my floss. Otherwise I'm gonna have issues while I keep working. There we go. Yeah, it was snagging because it wasn't even. And then last week I learned to keep my, I think it's just a matter of you have to do it the same every single time is what I'm concluding with embroidery. As I do more is thread it the exact same way, keep myself in kind of the same rhythm, and as I embroider, I think that's really, I'm finding that that is important in the process to be consistent in kind of my execution of how I'm going about doing the embroidery. I'm just going to do a quick tack and then I want to start working back. But I need to draw my line a little bit better because it's kind of disappeared with all the rubbing, and I want to make sure I follow that line. And sometimes I've been finding that as I'm drawing, it's really helpful for me to use a straight edge to be able to give something to kind of work against, so I can do like multiple strokes. Because the last thing I want is a really fuzzy line. Going over to my ruler stash. Yeah, I just want to be able to clearly see my line, and I think having a straight edge definitely helps me. It's hard to see, but it is a little bit dark, so. All right, let me get these hoops out of the way. Okay. Oof. I'll just take a break for a quick second, get some water. So yeah, hopefully, Austin, that answered your question regarding embroidery when I said that. Yeah. I kind of was before talking about something that I've been struggling with as an artist, as a creative, is kind of like my own expectation in terms of what it is that I'm making. And sometimes that internal expectation stops me from doing. And I don't know, it's something that I've been working through. I used to think through that a lot, but I found that kept me in my head a lot. And that wasn't necessarily a good place to be. And what I mean by that is that I can stay in my head for a very long time and yes, think about what I'm going to do from a lot of different angles and think through the steps and problem solve and kind of go through the different scenarios, meaning, you know, okay, if I start this way and I do this, this, and this, then this might happen, okay, I could adjust here. And I think that can be good because it is the problem solving aspect. But if I stay in that state for too long, then it's like I could always constantly tweak the thinking. But the best way to do it is to really take action and work through it, right? So like on the shoes, for example, yeah, I had to take some time to think about embroidery and then learn a little bit, but there comes kind of this tipping point of either I keep thinking about it or I just sit down and do it. And if it doesn't work out, I kind of readjust as I keep going. And it sounds so simple, but sometimes it's so difficult for me to get outside of my head for some reason. And I find that the antidote or the solution for that is really just the doing and the, yeah, just like showing up and doing and working through it on the spot. Again, the process, kind of like the quote that I read at the beginning, and that's why it grounds me so much, is that it really reminds me that like I figure things out as you do. I'm just curious, like if whatever discipline you work in, or even whatever hobby you have, if something similar happens in terms of, you know, if you stay in your head too long, what does that look like for you? Yeah, I wanted to get that thought out before I kind of get back to work. So I'm gonna switch back over. It's only been a couple minutes, but I'm gonna switch back over to working again to, you know, try to get some more stitches in. Yeah, and I think along that line, like it kind of goes to this whole, not this whole, but last week I mentioned Marie Forleo, and I've studied with her a lot, and she's just somebody who I really enjoy the way that she presents information. She says a lot of things that many other people also say, and I find that whenever somebody's putting their stuff out there, it's usually, it might probably have been said before. I think most things have been said before. But maybe it's just how we say it. And so I find that I enjoy her because the way she says things, I understand and I relate to. And she has this saying that it's one way to say it. It's called action, or clarity comes from action. And I'm sure there's other ways to say that. I've heard that said in a variety of different ways. But it really is true. And I think when I first heard that, it's like, yeah, okay, cool, I get that. But really, man, it's powerful when you actually start just taking action and doing. It makes a big difference, I think, in really figuring out what it is you want to be doing, how you want to execute it. Just all of that, at least for me, it has. And that's just something like I've been working through, and I wanted to kind of muse on while I work today, even if it sounds rambly. My apologies. Okay, so that is really the end. I'm not going to be coming that far back anymore. So this is really the tip of where this section is going to end. So I'm going to now move the shoe this way so that I'm working in the same pattern as before. So basically, now that I'm switching directions, I'm going to switch the direction of the shoe, so my stitch pattern feels the same, if that makes sense. Great. So in this instance, the yarn needs to, the floss needs to continue to stay on the outside. On the left side. Is that where I want it? Yeah. So it is a little bit different. It's gonna stay on this side. Again, to keep it on the side that's closest to the rest of the stitches. So when I go this direction, it ends up being on the right side rather than on the left. So let me show that again. So I have my stitch that you can see. I put it here. I notice my camera's not really picking it up. There we go. It wants to like focus here instead of focusing here. So you can see that I have my stitch, but rather than keeping the yarn on the left side, on the way back, I keep it on the right side because I want it to be butted up to the rest of this to fill it in. All right. I'm gonna kind of do a line like that. Nice. Nice. Now that I'm grouping again, go back to that thought of the clarity in action. I think why I'm thinking about it is I have been writing a little bit, and today I was writing a journal entry, a blog entry on the first pair of spoon shoes that I did. And something that I noticed was maybe when I'm going about first making, I don't always know exactly why I'm doing, like, I don't necessarily articulate because it happens so naturally, like what I'm working on. But afterwards, when I think through, oh, I did this and this is the reason why, you know, it's almost like the clarity was coming of like, as I was writing about what I was doing after the fact, I was like, oh man, it's really clear at the end what I was doing and why I was doing and what I learned. But when I'm in the midst of it, I don't always know. I get a little lost. And sometimes I'm wondering if sometimes that plays a part in sometimes my fear of not wanting to get started, or my fear of like, oh, if I don't show up today, it's okay, because then I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to struggle through those questions. I don't have to struggle through the not knowing and figuring it out. So yeah, that was an interesting thing today. I think it's more of just like me learning about myself and kind of that creative process. And I've been in an art group, and I'm finding that I'm not the only one that tends to stay in my head. So I am curious to know, if you're not an artist, but you work in a different medium, do you deal with that also? Or is it like purely a creative thing? I'm gonna make an educated guess that it's not purely a creative thing, but I'd love to know from you. So you can see I am kind of just gonna follow this line down, and then I'll fill it in. Since I'm basically wanting a really clean line all the way back. I don't want to fill in and fill in, because I'm not coming back to this point anymore. Meaning, if I were to have just continued to follow this line each time I come, I think this line here would have been kind of jagged, where versus if I just go straight back and create my line and then fill in, it's gonna give me a good seam on this line, and I want it to have a relatively crisp seam, because I'm trying to make it feel like, you know, it's that swoosh of the paint. Yeah. It was really fun to go back and kind of write about my first set of spoon shoes that I did. Kind of cool. I look forward to publishing it, and you guys can read it. I think in general, like, I haven't wanted to show up for myself for a while, because I've stayed in my head for so long, and therefore, like, I don't know, when I'm in my head, you know, I'm not doing actually helps you be more clear, and I haven't really known exactly what I've been wanting to do and why I've been wanting to do it. And so I think, like, thank you for being here with me, because just showing up and doing this live, even though I question myself, I feel sometimes like a complete idiot because I don't know if I'm doing this right. And sure, there's the thoughts of like, what if somebody watches this who actually knows what they're doing and they're like, this chick doesn't know what the heck she's working on. Like, those thoughts go through my head, as well as, do I just ramble and nobody wants to listen to what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. But thank you for being here, because it just helps me to figure it out. I'm not gonna know unless I show up and do it. So unless I keep showing up on camera, like, I'm not gonna feel natural. I'm not gonna get better at bringing you along into my process and explaining what I'm doing. You know, and you know, maybe that's what y'all want to hear, or that's what I want to talk about. Maybe it's something else, but until I start doing it, I don't know. So thank you for being along and during the early stages of this with me. It means so much to me. I don't want to take long breaks. I want to keep putting this first because it's something that it just makes me feel better. Like I feel more fulfilled in my life and in what I'm doing when I'm showing up and I'm working on stuff. So thank you. With all my imperfections, thank you for being here. I just got this knotted up. Oh, there we go. Line's looking pretty good. I need to start tucking these in. They're starting to distract me. Well, and I mentioned last week, the ink that I'm using, it's erasable ink. I love erasable pens. And so I'm using these by Pilot. It is, I don't know if it'll focus. It should focus here. Yeah, I'm using these Pilot guys, but they're really good. And then it's erasable, so it's by heat and friction that it erases. So I can just use like a blow dryer or a heat gun on this, and it'll get rid of those lines if I can still see them after I'm done with the embroidery. Awesome. Thank you for listening to my rambling. You're the best. Oh, sorry. There's my picture again. I want a really clean swoop, so I have a feeling I'm just gonna end up, now that I've started here, my plan, okay, so I'm at a decision point right now. So let me talk through this right now while I'm working, right? So you can see I came to the end point here, right? So if I'm trying to mimic the feel of, let me go back to the car itself, okay? So if I'm trying to mimic the feel of, let's just say, the livery on this particular car and in this image, right? And so it has these long swooshes as though it's paint. And I envision it as there was a wall of paint and then the shoe just went through it, right? So if the shoe in this instance went through it, then how would that look? And so here I have this line going and I have my trace, and what I'm thinking is to do the outline first, because that is going to be the most crisp seam. Yeah, I think that's going to be the most crisp seam, if that makes sense, on the embroidery line versus filling in and constantly connecting. So that is what I'm thinking right now, is to actually get my line and then go back in and fill everything in. That would make sense, at least to here where I have something underneath, and then I can finish it up there. So that's what I'm gonna do. That makes sense. Does that make sense? Yeah. Again, in the moment, if things are just so automatic to me, I don't always think through how to articulate, because I'm just in that moment making those decisions, and it's something that I've been doing for a while, and so I don't even think about that. So here I'm going to do pretty small stitches to make this corner turn as best I can. So let's see how this looks. It might not look good, so let's see. Maybe it won't turn out. I'm basically just doing one stitch at a time here. Well, not one stitch at a time, like one mesh hole at a time. There you go. Oh yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Shaking my head because the 6 strands again are doing something funky, like they've separated and it's twisting funny and it's not laying flat, so I have to untwist it. That's why I was shaking my head. I think it was hard to see that on camera, but I basically had a single strand that as I was pulling it kept like bunching, and so it wasn't laying flat. So I've taken it off the needle and I'm basically just almost brushing it with my finger and smoothing that back out. So okay. Oh yeah, I think that that's a pretty good. I'm very happy with that. Oh yeah. And I guess this is kind of where by doing if you don't do, you don't get that feeling of like, oh, I did it. I wanted to achieve and what I'm meaning here is I wanted to achieve like a very smooth kind of U in that bend. And I feel like it was pretty good. So yeah, I'm pretty darn happy with that. Okay, in another 20 minutes. I feel like it's time to take a break and just take a stretch for a minute. Take a little bit of water. Give myself that moment. You can see it's an old photo behind it. Yeah. Oof. I always forget to stretch when I've been sitting on the computer for too long. I did it! I did it! Yay! Thanks, Austin. I did it. Yeah, that's the dance. Oy, oy, oy. Oh. All right. What do we think? Keep going? Keep going? We want to do a final 20 minutes to work for a full 60 minutes, a full hour? I think so. Especially since I didn't get really much done this last week. I think it's probably good to do that. Yep. Oh, Austin wants 2 more hours. You want your shoes done, mister. You want your shoes done. At this rate, you're not gonna see them until the winter time. I shouldn't say that. I'll keep working, little by little. Well, at least, how about I at least get the outline done, and then tonight off camera I can work on filling it in. This hat is by this artist, this French artist that has a studio in Barcelona, and they have these bears. So if you're ever in Barcelona, you can often find this bear graffitied all around in different places. Well, so be on the lookout. So Barcelona, this bear, look for him. And then if you're in the neighborhood of Galicia, then you could find their shop. It's Endz Lab, so ENDZLAB is the name of their shop and their studio, but I really love it. It's a fun bear. Okay, I'm stretched out enough. Let's get back to working. I took a 5-minute break. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm gonna finish out this section and line it. Okay. And then, you know, on the livery, you can see that there are some dots. I come back here. Right, and I come back here, you know, it's got like the kind of that dot splatter pattern. I'm not going to try to connect that here. I'll do a separate stitch that I pull over, maybe. I actually have to think through that. Yet another thing to problem solve. This is the first time I am going on this part of the fabric, which is definitely a lot looser. And I'm gonna make an educated guess that one of the reasons why my floss is separating is that maybe because this isn't like a taut surface. Okay, so I'm at the point here right now, and I want a really crisp point. This one I think is gonna get covered up by the lace a little bit. In the inside? No. So I think this is gonna get covered up by the lace a little bit, but this one is probably not, so I want it to be really crisp. So, I already tell what I'm gonna do is, rather than coming here and stitching and having something bulky, I'm actually going to, underneath, there's like this tiny little thread that I don't want to pick up. There we go. Like surgery. Okay. So I want it to be on this side so that I can just go straight. But okay, whatever I just did, it made it uneven. So I'm gonna stitch that out, even out my, there we go. There we go. And then I can now have like a very, just the one piece is gonna be the point. So just the one entry point, just that one space. I'm looking for my words. I'm looking for, oh, it's in my hand. So. I basically just did some single, almost like single wraparound there to try to have this be as sharp of a point as possible. Okay. Got it. It's definitely behaving different now that it's loose. That is very... Yeah. Yeah, it's behaving very differently. Now that I'm working on a section that is less loose or more loose. So I'm going back into problem solving mode because it's behaving very differently now that it's loose here, and I'm thinking I probably need to stuff it because it's actually really hard to get a smooth line with my floss. Is it purple? So it's like a... All right, so problem solving. What I just did not work. It was basically bunching and it looked really messy. So I'm going in and I'm carefully backing out my stitches. And then I'll go in for a second try. Okay. All right. I'm gonna stuff this with something to see if that helps, because as it keeps shifting, it's making the floss really uneven. And this is much looser here than down here. It's much tighter. So I need to get I got some fabric that I'm gonna shove in there and see if that helps. So I'm just taking this curtain that I a lot of times use to diffuse the light from the windows if I'm doing photography work. And I'm going to use it as like a stuffing to give myself some pressure in there so I have something to push against. Oh yeah, that's gonna be a lot better. So see, that's now like much more solid for me to work against. That is gonna be much better. Okay, so first step in the solving what is going on and what was not working. Probably why in embroidery you work on a hoop. You need that tautness. Okay. And I am just smoothing out my floss. I can see that I have a bit of like a imperfection there. All right. Let's try it a second time and see what it can come up with. Okay, so what? How much can I throw this shoe around? Oh yeah, that definitely helps. That a big help. All right. I just did like a that's like a chain stitch. Yeah, that's what I just did. And I feel like that looks better. I'm gonna hold it in place with my thumb. Oh yeah, that's much better second round. That's much, much better. So giving myself the padding on the inside to be able to work against so it doesn't shift, that is very helpful. So made note of that. And then I did like a chain stitch and then I'm continuing on. So I have a nice little fresh point there. Pointy point. I'm just going underneath that section there, and then I will pick up the stitch. Okay. Right, I'm not bad. I'm liking it. Doing it. All right. So it is, oh, sorry, that's in the way. I'd like keep it in a good spot on camera, but also being able to be close enough to see, so. All right, I'm coming into that curve. I feel like I'm talking about a racetrack. Coming into the curve, so I need to be intentional about the line of my stitches and make sure that I hug that line. I'm just kidding. I'm so full of it. I've only been on a track a couple times, but I have to say, you know, like, I'm not the car expert. However, I really appreciate the beauty of cars. And I think that's maybe something where, like, it's definitely my husband who has the understanding and the knowledge base with cars. I cannot rattle off cars, makes, everything else, but I know I appreciate them. When I look at them, they're so, like, cars are so beautiful. Like, they're just absolutely beautiful pieces of machinery. And I think too, like, it's such an interesting, like, it's this amazing machinery with design and everything that goes into it. And then it's also something that, like, you get to use and become very intimate with yourself, and, like, you get to experience your own way in that car, like when you're in it and you're driving it and you're responding to, like, how it moves and pulls, and depending if you're, you know, driving some mountain roads with twists, like in a sports car, like how you sit into the seat when you're driving, and, like, just all those things. I think it's, like, really beautiful. And so I might not have all that knowledge, but there's something about the car, it's like cars themselves and just their overall design and beauty, and then the interaction you get. It's, I feel a lot of times, like, when I'm in a car, specifically a sports car, and I'm driving it, I can feel everybody who worked on it, you know, like, when it's a really great car, like, I can feel the designers, I can feel the mechanics, I can feel the engineers, like, in the car, because of how I'm interacting with it. It's like I can tell, yeah, a human made this and came up with this, and it feels right and it fits me. I don't know if that makes sense, but man, it's such it's a very personal feeling in a car, and it's like I'm becoming one with somebody else's art piece. I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, but at least that's what I feel when I'm in one. Right. Looking good. Oh yeah. Ooh. It's feeling fun. It's like starting to take shape. It's super fun. I was getting a little, like, discouraged of how long this is gonna take, because I felt like I kind of bit off more than I could chew. But today, you know, it's just that little bit of, like, outlining in progress that I'm starting to see how it's coming together. And I think this kind of goes along with what I'm talking about with my own realization of, like, clarity comes through action, because as I'm working on this and making more progress, it's becoming clear how much more work there is to do, how I'm problem solving it, and, like, keeping me motivated. And, like, the outcome is becoming clearer as I work. So yeah. When you see me doing that, what I'm doing is I'm bringing the thread in and out to try to smooth it out, since it's kind of not fully twisted anymore. So sometimes it gets pulled at different strengths. Sorry, my head was in the way. and it does not lay flat. So for example, I'll kind of use this so that way this is almost like it's ironing it out, and it's helping me get like a nice clean line when I lay it down. So I'm finding that this embroidery needle is becoming a very handy little friend as I work. Oh man, has it already been 20 minutes? All right. Yeah. It's been an hour. I've been going for like an hour and a half. Maybe it's time to be done and say goodbye for the night, for the day. What time of day is it? I don't even know anymore. Yeah. So, yeah, you can see the progress. I'm making that. I'm gonna finish this up. I'll do that off camera, and I'll tie it off probably underneath. So when I come back next week, I won't be back on Wednesday. I'm gonna stream next week on Friday. So I'll see you in about a week and a half on Friday, and I'll complete this and I'll have all of this filled in, and maybe hopefully I've also outlined this. So yeah, we're getting there. We're almost, can I say I'm an eighth of the way done? Anyhow, I'm almost an eighth of the way done. Only the rest of this quarter and the rest to go. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's what I'm gonna finish. I'm really liking that. That looks kind of cool. So that's gonna be good, and it's like raised in a really good way. Oh, I'll probably also put the laces on to kind of see how that's looking with the laces. And then if I have to adjust these are kind of not in the same direction. So I do want to make sure all of these are kind of, that what I mean is that like these lines, that they're lining up, so they're not in different directions, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna pay attention to that. So that's where I am. That's where I'm gonna end today. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. Austin, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my only fan. I'm just kidding. I really appreciate everybody that also comes back and watches the replay. I hope you're finding it interesting. I'm sure when I'm done, I will put together a kind of condensed version that you could watch in, not in real time, because embroidery is very slow. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, I'll be back on Friday. So next week I'll stream on Friday. And yeah, I'll see you then. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Okay, bye.